Hi, and welcome to Learning Objective 7 in Chapter 25. In this particular learning objective, we're going to take a look at how investments in education and research and development impact economic growth and productivity. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so here we are, Learning Objective 7. And when we talk about these two um, investments, meaning investment in education, one of the things is that it is more longer term. So I'm going to go ahead and write that up here. It's longer term, and sometimes it's difficult to see. You're not going to see the return on the investment in terms of tax dollars being used for education until sometime in the future. And this is why often we see educational cuts are easy because you don't really see a short-term downfall to it, but you do see it in the longer term. So again, this is the investment in human capital, which we have called H in the Cobb-Douglas production function. And it does help to close the gap. Education is one of those things that really do help poorer countries um, catch up when we talked about the catch-up effect. The opportunity cost is exactly what you're probably encountering is foregone wages. So do you attend school or do you take the job immediately? So when we talk about that, that is often our trade-off that we are making in terms of investing in education. It's often difficult in poorer countries to make the case that education pays off for the family because many times, especially if the country does not have child labor laws, that child can go out and help sustain um, or work in on the farm, work in various industries, and may make a very small wage, let's say $2 US dollars in a foreign country. Whereas if they invest in school, they're not going to be making anything in the short term, but in the long term, we're going to see a lot higher wages and perhaps a job that provides some leisure time and some other things. There are a lot of positive externalities, and remember, an externality are those things that we do not see by the market participant. So, for instance, if we talk about college educated citizens, and college educated citizens, we often make there is a positive correlation between higher citizenship. Um, those people will end up with higher paying jobs and eventually pay higher taxes. Okay, so that's some of the things that we say there's positive externalities, meaning society is affected positively by people being educated. One of the problem for poor countries is a brain drain. And this is where, for example, if someone from a poor country comes to the US to study, they might stay in the US because they get a higher wage. Okay, so knowledge is what we call a public good. And in a public good, what we mean is we can't prevent anyone from getting it. So it's non-excludable. And we also can provide one person education without taking away from someone else. So we call that in economics non-rival. So the two factors is non-excludable and non-rival. We talk about research and development. The government subsidizes a lot of research through the National Science Foundation and other types of things, the National Institutes of Health. And I kind of talked about that one in the intro for this particular video. Again, providing tax breaks, grants. Some of those grants don't have to be repaid and so on. Again, the idea is human capital, and it leads to a healthier overall population, okay? Healthier workers are more productive because they don't miss as much work, so missing time, and they may miss time only because of sickness, so they get sick pay. We noticed that during Corona, that was a big issue. Was some people wanted to go to work because they wouldn't get sick pay. Okay, all right. So health of the population, again, making the right investments, and that's really the key is what is the right investment, and it depends on the country. And there is some historical long-term growth that we've seen, economically speaking, for improved health from better nutrition, taller workers, believe it or not, there is a lot of research that says taller workers have higher wages, better productivity. Now, we want to be careful because just because a wage is higher doesn't necessarily mean those workers are more productive. In the US, for example, there is no correlation between worker happiness and worker productivity. So we want to be careful about drawing those conclusions. Some studies have tried to do that, but a lot of them have been refuted. In poor countries, again, not healthy, so therefore, can they really perform to their greatest potential? And again, cannot afford healthcare and nutrition. So those are some of the big downpours or drawbacks that we see when we're talking about poorer countries, and not only the lack of infrastructure, but also the lack of basic sanitation and some of the things that we talked about in the second objective to chapter 25. Okay, so it's a virtuous circle, okay? Policies that lead to more rapid economic growth would promote future economic growth. So once you make the investment, that investment in that country is not going to pay off until the long term. But what happens is, in the long term, it continues to perpetuate itself into higher growth or higher GDP per person. Okay, that's the end of this particular learning objective. And then I have a video that I want to talk about investments in education, and then a video that talks about innovation is really the key to economic growth. I'll see you back in the next objective. Thanks.
What does better education have to do with economic gains? Well, a country's economic growth is dependent on the skills of its workers. And it turns out that math and reading proficiency are good predictors of the skills that lead to growth. Without basic math and reading abilities, people don't have a foundation for more advanced knowledge that leads to more productive work. During the last century, the United States grew quickly because it embraced universal education earlier than other countries, resulting in a relatively more skilled workforce. But our educational advantage has slowly disappeared. International test scores put our math and reading proficiency around 30th in the world, which points to low future growth. Even American students with college-educated parents who would be expected to do well actually don't compare to students in other countries. Just getting to Canada's level would lead to a more productive workforce, adding trillions to the economy in the long run and boosting every worker's paycheck. It wouldn't fix the economy overnight, but it would immensely improve the lives of future generations. Whatever policies we choose, one thing is clear. If students become more proficient in math and reading, long-run economic growth will follow.
In the past, printing, the steam engine, and aeroplanes were new technologies that fundamentally changed our ways of life. Today, artificial intelligence and smart technologies are transforming how we live, produce, and consume. Most innovations originate from scientific discoveries, although they can only become commercially successful if some key conditions are in place to ensure profitability and value for end users. First, other new technologies may be required for the innovation to fly. Take Leonardo da Vinci. He designed a prototype of a flying machine around 1485, but the required material to make it work was invented 4 centuries later. Second, work processes may need to be redesigned and new skills need to be learned. When computers were first introduced in companies, there was an unexpected decline in productivity because no one knew how to use them effectively. Third, company structures must be adaptive to the requirements of the new technology. For example, an innovative software company might need a flat structure rather than a traditional hierarchical structure. Fourth, new business models may be required to harness the economic potential of these inventions. Examples of such new business models are Airbnb, Netflix, mobile money, and Spotify. Fifth, New forms of regulation need to be considered as new business models may pose challenges that require a change in how industries are regulated. At Birkbeck, our postgraduate business innovation programs foster new thinking about management, strategy, corporate assets, and governance in a changing world. Our students specialize in digital business, international technology management, and entrepreneurship, and they're taught by world-leading experts. Innovation is the engine of growth and prosperity in a society. Come to Birkbeck to understand how it all works.